What up, y'all? It is your boy Darius, and I'm back, y'all. So we have a video we're gonna react to, y'all. Now this one says the many beefs of Michael Jackson. Now, who would wants to beef with Michael Jackson though? Wants to be with Michael though? Cause Michael, from what I heard, Michael's the sweetest, kind person ever though. So let's check this out. What he's saying in this video though. Let's get it, y'all.
Jackson, you probably think of a soft-spoken, charitable, and kind artist. And while all of that may be true, what a lot of people don't realize is that he could be a little cutthroat, especially when it came to beefs and business, which inevitably led to him having some serious back and forths with his fellow artists, with some labeling him cold as ice. So join me today as we look into the many beefs of Michael Jackson. When Michael Jackson and Eminem beefed, it was pretty surprising. Not only because they're some of the biggest names in the music industry, but also because of the...
Yeah, I went over the history. Did my Eminem versus Michael Jackson What Happened video. So if you have not seen it, go and check that out though. Cause when Eminem dropped the song Just Lose It, it was making fun, making parody, but Michael didn't like it with the allegation with kids at that time. So cause he was fighting for his friend though, but I think he beat his case though. So yeah, so Eminem was making fun of that though. But Michael didn't appreciate that one bit though.
Weird ways they went about taking shots at one another. Em and Mike's relationship had its first road bump back in 2003. This is when Em was in Glasgow for a show, where at his hotel with tons of paparazzi watching, he dangled and tossed around a baby doll out of his window. Without context, you're probably wondering, what does that have to do with Michael? Well, a few months earlier, MJ was in Berlin for an awards ceremony, and for whatever reason, he dangled his 8-month-old son out the window. Mike faced some obvious backlash for this terrible mistake, which led to him eventually apologizing, saying, "I got caught up in the excitement of the moment. I would never intentionally endanger the lives of my children." This is a weird thing to do regardless of excitement. Maybe he was just trying to show the kid off to the crowd. That could be it. I don't know. But what's important is that it was a pretty bad public moment for Michael, which he took a decent amount of criticism for. And that's why Eminem mocked him. So you could see how this would start a bit of a rift between Michael and Em, who weren't even friends before any of this. But Eminem decided to take it a step further. In 2004, Eminem dropped the song Just Lose It as the lead single for his album Encore. Along with the song was a music video which had multiple scenes clearly mocking Michael.
Down, down, down. At the center of the dance floor, like TP for my bunghole, and it's cool if you let one.
But it wasn't just the video that stirred things up, because when you look into the lyrics, Em goes at Mike with some pretty wild subliminals. Early in the song's intro, Em says, "Alright, stop, pajama time." This isn't just some MC Hammer pun. He's instead referring to the 2003 Michael Jackson documentary Living with Michael Jackson, in which Mike discussed letting kids sleep in his bed. And throughout the rest of Just Lose It, Em continued to take more digs at Michael and his case, saying things like, "Guess who's back with a brand new rap?" And I don't mean rap as in a new case of child accusations. I don't touched on everything but little boys, and that's not a stab at Michael. That's just a metaphor. I'm just a psycho. Obviously, the Michael Jackson allegations were a huge thing at the time, and while eventually he was found not guilty, Eminem making fun of this probably didn't make him feel so good. Apparently, Michael tried to get the song banned at first, but that didn't end up working. So he eventually spoke on how he felt about the bold jokes made at his expense.
I've never met Mr. Eminem, and to have him, I've always admired him, and to have him do something like that was pretty painful as an artist to another artist. And it's sad because, well, I think what Stevie Wonder said is true. And I just don't want to say too much more than that. But he should be ashamed of himself, what he's doing. I've never attacked another fellow artist. Great artists don't do that. You don't have to do that.
Michael was clearly frustrated by the song, understandably so, and in response to Michael's frustration, Eminem was actually honored and explained the whole reason behind Just Lose It's creation.
Yeah, that wasn't intentional, but I'm just happy that Michael Jackson has heard of me. You know?
That's the kind of cool side of it.
The fact that he's heard of me is that does me enough. But like the personal things, that was not planned. It was making no personal judgment from Michael Jackson. It was not, you know what I'm saying? Like, it was completely meant to be all in jest.
The beef up until this point was pretty one-sided, and after this, it went pretty silent. That wasn't until in 2007 when things subtly reignited behind the scenes with Michael's Sony ATV publishing partnership. This group already owned a significant amount of projects for major artists. But then they secured Viacom's famous music catalog for $370 million, which included a lot of Eminem's back catalog. Some fans theorized that this was all a part of Michael's get back for Just Lose It. While the purchase of famous music included some famous names like Shakira, Eminem was considerably one of the most valuable, with hits like Without Me and The Real Slim Shady now being owned by Michael's publishing partnership. A lot of people like to make it seem like Michael Jackson just kind of went out there and bought only Eminem's catalog, which was not the case. So even if the move wasn't meant as direct revenge, it's still a pretty funny and wild way to end the beef. And like I said, there isn't really any concrete evidence that the purchase was made solely to spite M, but it has become a trend for Michael to buy the music of those he beefed with, because he did it again to Paul McCartney of the Beatles. Unlike with Eminem, Paul McCartney and Michael Jackson actually started out as friends. In the early 70s, they first started working together, with Paul somewhat taking Mike under his wing. As the years went by, the two continued collaborating, eventually growing so close that Michael would stay with Paul and his wife while recording in London. In the early 80s, they recorded multiple songs together, including Say 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 and The Girl Is Mine, which
Welcome to today, the day where you no longer have to see the world.
which is one of my personal favorites from the two, which both ended up going platinum.
Michael originally fancied writing some stuff with me, and I thought it was a good idea. So he came over here to England, and we just hung out for a little while and got to know each other a bit, and ended up writing 2 songs.
One night at dinner while Michael was living with Paul in London, the two started talking about publishing and song ownership. During this conversation, Paul took out a notebook which had a list of all of the songs he owned publishing rights to.
I said, you got to get a really good manager, because it's all going to be coming in and it could all go out if you don't. And I said, and you ought to think of getting into song publishing.
For a business, you ought to think about music publishing. It's because it's very good business. You love music. I'm into it. It does very well. It's a nice, easy business for a musician to be in. And it's a very rewarding business, because it's music, it's songs, beautiful songs.
He was trying to tell Michael that investing in music catalogs and publishing rights was the right thing to do. It was a smart investment. And Michael took this advice to heart, in the same conversation even insisting that he would buy Paul's music one day. However, as bold as it sounded, Michael wasn't joking, and it ended up being one of the best financial moves he ever made. At this time, Paul was pretty deep into the music publishing investment game. He owned a bunch of songs and catalogs. He learned this the hard way, though, after being almost forced to sell the rights to the Beatles music in the 60s. This was due to a tax problem in Britain at the time, and to avoid paying about 90% on their earnings. So to dodge this, he created Northern Songs Ltd. and later took the company public. While this was a smart move at the time, the decision ended up turning bad in 1969, when the Beatles publishers sold their shares of the company to Britain's Associated Television, also known as ATV. Sound familiar? None of the Beatles members or any other shareholders of Northern Songs were aware of this sale or even able to prevent it regardless. When they did eventually find out about it, counterbid attempts were made, but in the end failed, which means not only did they lose the majority of their company, but they also lost the publishing rights to their music. The whole ordeal ended up becoming an example in the industry of why you should never sell your music's publishing rights, a lesson which Michael learned a lot from himself. Throughout the next few years, Michael started buying up decent-sized catalogs across the industry, at first passing up on most of the options presented to him, only buying music which he had an affection for. But when Michael's career really started taking off, he had a ton more money to play with, which led to him diving deeper into the publishing game. Eventually, in 1985, Michael's team approached him about the massive ATV catalog being up for sale, asking if he wanted to make an offer. Initially, he was only buying copyrights, but the ATV package came with a bunch more, including studios, equipment, and even life insurance policies, which was common for publishers to take out on their biggest artists, one of which was for Paul. Apparently, over the years, Paul had made some weak attempts to bid for ATV, but never anything worth considering. It's believed that Paul just really wanted his music and not the thousands of other songs and things that it came with. However, since the Beatles tracks made up a significant portion of the catalog's value, it was hard for ATV to agree to selling one without the other. And eventually, Michael decided to buy ATV Publishing for $47.5 million, which officially granted him ownership to thousands of songs, including 251 Beatles songs. When Paul became aware of this, he was pretty pissed off at Michael, and he said, "I think it's dodgy to do something like that, to be someone's friend and then buy the rug they're standing on." Michael allegedly tried to call Paul many times to talk things out, but in his frustration, Paul hung up every time. As more time passed, Michael used the Beatles songs in numerous projects, profiting significantly off the publishing rights. In response, Paul reached out a bunch and tried to prevent this, arguing that the music being used in commercials and other things cheapened it. But Michael continued saying that, oh, it will only make the music bigger and more people will hear it and give you more exposure. In 1990, Michael and Paul finally met to discuss their problems.
But I do intend to have a word tonight. I spoke to him in LA, actually.
You did?
Yeah, and said, look, we've got to come to a good understanding here, because there are a number of things I don't like about how he runs the company. In our case, the trouble is, like the Nike thing that came up, I don't know if you heard about that, but the trouble is that we never did do commercials. With the Beatles, we had all those offers.
Paul said to Michael that he was basically tricked into selling his copyrights while he was young, and now he feels betrayed that his old friend is using this mistake to profit off his music. Michael was claiming that he didn't mean to hurt anyone by doing this, and he was confused. Shortly after this, Paul's attorney reached out to Michael's team and stated that the two artists agreed that Paul's royalties for his music would be increased. However, when Michael's team asked him if this was true, Michael shot this down, saying they never agreed on it. And in response, Paul's team threatened to sue. Apparently, behind the scenes, Michael felt that Paul had many chances to buy his music back, but passed on them because he was too cheap. So now that he owns them and Paul has a problem with it, Michael believed he had no duty to make things right. Which, I don't know, from my perspective, look, I love Michael Jackson, he's dope, but that seems a little snaky, I'll be honest. Years later, in 2001, Paul said, so we haven't talked and we don't have that great a relationship. The trouble is, I wrote those songs for nothing, and buying them back at these phenomenal sums, I just can't do it. To which Michael responded, oh Paul, that's just business. I love picturing him saying that in his voice, that's so fun. This sentiment continued for years as Paul held a reasonable resentment towards Michael. Eventually, when he tragically passed, Sony/ATV purchased the final shares in a deal with Michael's family worth.
A few years ago, I put out this video.
What the f is in your mouth?
And immediately it started racking up millions of views. Why? Probably some
750 million. Since Michael's passing, Paul has expressed that he no longer holds much anger about the situation anymore. While he still believes his initial response was valid, there's obviously no point in pursuing it any further. And in the end, in 2018, Paul was able to start getting a bunch of his music back from Sony/ATV through some legal loopholes following a lawsuit and a private legal settlement. So at the end of the day, it's kind of crazy. Paul got his publishing rights back like half a century later. This feud was very public and very direct, but Michael's beef with Prince was a lot more subliminal and spurred on by fans. While Michael Jackson dominated
this one's shocking me for this one. I did not know that Michael Jackson and Prince had issue with each other though. I think I want to do like a what happened video between Michael Jackson and Prince. I think I want to do a video about that though. So yeah, I want to probably do my research on that. See what was the problem, because these two were the biggest artists of all time though, man. So yeah, so recipes to Michael and Prince though. So yeah.
The music game for years, it's hard to talk about pop in the 80s without bringing up Prince. Both artists contributed to the genre in major ways. Throughout their respective solo careers, the two artists rose in step with each other, growing in an almost parallel way. In some cases, they both even dropped projects at the exact same time. Although, while their release schedule and rise was pretty similar, the content of their character and music was pretty contrasted. One fan said about Prince, he was always more risque and always pushed boundaries. Prince is indirectly why there is a parental advisory label on music with profanity. And they continued on with Michael saying, Michael Jackson was a star as a child. He was a lead singer of one of the biggest acts in music during the 70s. Therefore, he basically has two careers. One as a child and one as an adult. Michael Jackson was probably the greater entertainer. Funny enough, the two were born in the same year, only months apart, and both grew up in the Midwest. Surprisingly though, with all of these parallels, the two didn't get along very well. They ran into each other for the first time at the 1983 New Year's Eve James Brown concert, a legend that both young stars looked up to. For context, around this time the media had already been heavily pitting the two against one another, and at this show, James inevitably invited Michael up on stage to perform some of his songs. But since Michael wasn't the only star in the room, Michael whispered in James' ear and dared him to invite Prince on stage. Prince accepted and performed with his own little bit of flair. This was the first and the last time that Michael and Prince ever shared a stage. And after watching, you probably think there's not much negative to point out, especially since Prince clearly had the crowd screaming, even if he didn't sing that much. But when you look at the details, a bunch of things actually went wrong. Apparently his guitar was malfunctioning, and when Prince attempted to swing on the prop light pole, the entire thing fell into the crowd. Again, this doesn't seem too bad, but since it was at a major event in front of his idol, you could see how it felt a bit embarrassing. To make matters worse, Michael, who invited him on stage, mocked Prince relentlessly for this performance. And as a result, according to Quincy Jones, Prince even attempted to run Michael over with his car after the show, which, if that's true, is crazy. Their beef intensified further when Prince declined an invite from Michael to appear on the recording of the We Are the World charity single. So, in the following year, Quincy Jones attempted to end the beef by setting up a collaboration between Michael and Prince on the song Bad. However, Prince again decided to turn down the offer. After the fact, Prince decided to explain to Chris Rock why he did that.
This is the story of you turning down Bad.
Well, you know, that Wesley Snipes character, that would have been me. All right, now you run that video in your mind. The first line of that song is, "Your butt is mine." Your butt is mine. Now I said, who gonna sing that to whom? Cause you sure ain't singing it to me. And I sure ain't singing it to you. So,
in response to this and other sneak disses, Michael said in a later released audio recording for his 1988 Moonwalk memoir, "I don't like to be compared to Prince at all. I have proven myself since I was real little. He feels like he's my opponent. I hope he changes because, boy, he's gonna get hurt. He's the type that might commit suicide or something." Mike added on saying, "He was so rude, one of the rudest people I've ever met. Prince is very competitive. He's been very mean and nasty to me and my family," which is one of the few direct confrontations of this beef. In the following years, the two continued to have little run-ins here and there, with Michael repeating his attempts to bury the hatchet and Prince also repeating his denials. It wasn't until Michael's death that Prince appeared to experience a change of heart. After hearing about Michael's passing, Prince allegedly canceled rehearsal and went home, where he locked himself in his room for days. In further interviews, he spoke on this, saying, "It's always sad to lose someone you loved. I don't want to talk about it. I'm too close to it." And in tribute, he even started performing a cover of Michael's "Don't Stop Till You Get Enough." Then later in 2016, Prince also tragically died very young, with some of his close friends expressing sadness that the two stars, Michael Jackson and Prince, never realized how much they had in common before it was too late. And while this is a sad story, it's almost more sad to hear that Michael had a pretty serious beef with his own brother. Michael Jackson got his start in music through the Jackson 5, a band made up of him and his brothers Jackie, Tito, Jermaine, and Marlon, managed by their father, Joe Jackson. The group experienced a lot of success, and from the outside it seemed like everything was great, but that was far from the case. Inside the group existed a growing rivalry and power dynamic fueled by sibling jealousy, and eventually it even led to a brother-on-brother diss track. At first, Michael's older brother Jermaine was the Jackson 5's lead singer, until their mom noticed that Michael had a lot of talent, so eventually he was promoted to lead singer, which you might think, oh man, now they're gonna hate each other, that's where it all started. But they were still super close.
I was the lead singer first. When he started singing and he started watching James Brown and Joe Tex and all these people and Sammy Davis and Jackie Wilson, it was over. He could watch something and do it, and that's how he patterned himself.
Parents of children who play Roblox. If your child was sexually exploited, abused, or pressured,
Jermaine and Michael grew especially close due to the pairing of their unique voices attracting a large following. A big part of the Jackson 5 doing well was because of both Michael and Jermaine's talent. In a similar way to Michael and Prince, problems arose though when record labels tried to pin the two brothers against each other by pushing for them to produce solo projects. Even with this, the two were still tight. While their bond was strong, Michael quickly grew in popularity, noticeably eclipsing his brothers. And even with the marketing team at Motown Records pushing each brother for their unique personalities and roles in the band, Michael always got the most shine. During many of the press events is when the rivalry really started to get pushed, especially following the release of Michael and Jermaine's first solo album. Around this time, reporters asked the brothers playfully if one of them thought they were better than the other.
Did you and Michael get together and say, "Oh, look, you know, I'm number one this week and you're number one next week"?
No, well, he's the timing was just perfect. His album was out before mine, and mine came out.
Right.
I guess we both hit the charts at the same time.
And at times they even asked more direct questions, like when Mike is going solo and he's going to leave the Jackson 5 altogether. And I always find it slimy how the media likes to pit people against each other, especially when it's brothers. And despite this, their rivalry still seemed lighthearted.
Once the act gets so big, there's so many people that come around, the legal people and everyone, and they sort of almost pull you away. So it's important for us to continue to be a family and to stay together, because they divide and conquer.
Mike even said about Jermaine, "Growing up, it was Jermaine I focused on. He'd walk me to school. I'd get his hand-me-down clothes. It was his voice I first imitated. I loved his sound. He showed me the way. But even when the bond seemed unbreakable, eventually the two would drift apart. Jermaine went on to marry the daughter of the Motown Records founder, which on the surface doesn't seem bad. But the problem is, around this time, the Jackson 5 decided to split from Motown. This was due to the group being dealt an extremely unfair deal, which left them with a shockingly small amount of royalties. So they instead went over to Epic Records where they got a better deal. And this caused a problem because Jermaine decided to stay with Motown. He officially split from his brothers and his spot was filled by his younger brother Randy. In reflection of this split, Jermaine later said, "The sense of detachment and loneliness was profound. I didn't feel like I had lost my right arm. I felt like I had lost every limb. I had Hazel Gordy, of course, but the brotherhood was intrinsic to who I was and everything I knew. When it was ripped away, I felt something tear." And Michael had a similar sentiment, saying, "I clearly remember the first show we did without him, because it was so painful for me. Since my earliest days on stage, and even in our rehearsals in our Gary living room, Jermaine stood at my left with his bass. I depended on being next to Jermaine. In the end, though, Brotherhood won, and Jermaine rejoined the Jackson 5. This time, though, they had to go by the Jacksons, since Motown legally owned the name the Jackson 5. Despite the two being reunited, though, they began leaning more into their solo careers. Jermaine did well for himself, generating a strong amount of popularity, but Michael's growth obviously was on a whole nother level. And by the end of the 80s, Michael had claimed his throne as the king of pop. On the other hand, Jermaine signed a deal with Clive Davis and never seemed to peak like Michael did. And when looking back, the bitter truth came out. Michael allegedly always thought he was smarter, worked harder, and was more talented than his older brother. On the flip side, Jermaine always felt that Michael's timing is what made him the king of pop. Jermaine said, looking back, "That was supposed to be me. That's why I stayed at Motown. We had plans, but once Michael beat me to it, he made sure it would only be him." Up until this point, most of the resentment was unspoken, at least until 1991, when things turned ugly. Jermaine began working on an album with Babyface and L.A. Reid. Michael found out about this and coincidentally called Babyface in L.A. requesting a meeting. He even sent a helicopter to fly the two record moguls out to Neverland. Jermaine found out about this meeting and immediately requested to be released from his label, claiming that Michael was tricking Babyface and L.A. in order to sabotage his career. Apparently, when Babyface and L.A. arrived at Neverland, Michael said he had no clue who they were, confusing them for Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis. Regardless, Michael kept them busy for about a week, leading them on with music that was never actually going to happen. Apparently, Babyface and L.A. brought up Jermaine's frustration to Michael, and they said that he couldn't care less. L.A. Reid remembers the conversation going something like this. "He'll get over it," Michael said. "That's not really the problem," L.A. said. "The problem was that he wants off the label now." "Did he sign a contract?" asked Michael. "Yes," L.A. said. "Then he'll have to live with it, because those are the rules," Michael said and walked out. That Michael Jackson was one shrewd man. He was not wrong, but you didn't expect that from Peter Pan. You expect a little compassion or something. No. Cold as ice. And after about a week, Babyface and L.A. returned home to continue their work with Jermaine. While there isn't concrete evidence proving Michael's point was to delay his brother's work, many fans and people connected to the situation believe it was the case. Especially Jermaine, who, when L.A. and Babyface got back to Atlanta, decided he was going to make a diss track on his own brother. The vicious track was titled "Word to the Bad" and featured lyrics denouncing Michael as shallow and selfish. Jermaine even went at Mike for allegedly changing his skin color and obtaining plastic surgery. He also said that Michael hadn't answered his phone calls for months.
What is it, 1984 to 1992? You saw Michael maybe 3 times a year during that period?
Yes.
You sent him letters?
Yes.
Packages, but he never responded to any of them?
No.
Why didn't he want to see you, Jermaine?
It's not that he didn't want to see me.
He could have picked up the phone and seen you anytime he wanted.
No, Michael don't call.
Jermaine also said, "I understand he's a very busy person, but after you repeatedly try to contact your own brother and he doesn't call you back, you begin to wonder if he hasn't just completely lost touch with reality." Michael obviously didn't like the song and was even driven to sneaking into his parents' house to confront Jermaine, who apparently was avoiding him. Jermaine allegedly leaked the song and spoke on the song, saying, "I know people are going to go off on a tangent saying that Jermaine is jealous, but it's not true. Michael and I have never feuded. The only reason I wrote this song, and it came from the bottom of my heart, was to help my little brother get a grip on reality. I never meant to discredit him. The song was never supposed to come out in public. But now that it has, I'm here to say that yes, I wrote it and I stand by it." Although the diss track was the peak of their beef, it also seemed to be what ended it. Because whenever Michael and Jermaine spoke following its release, they seemed to have everything hashed out. And while the Jackson family had plenty of other drama, some involving more rumors of Michael suppressing his siblings' careers, in the case of Jermaine and Michael, the two ended on good terms. And as you may have noticed throughout this video, there were a lot of allegations and rumors about Michael Jackson, which is bound to happen when you're the king of pop. And one of the biggest rumors was that we never actually heard Michael Michael Jackson's real voice and that he instead pitched it way down for the public, which was actually a little bit true. And if you want to learn more about that, make sure to check out the video that's on screen right now. Other than that, though, it's been your boy Matty Balls. If you like, please leave a like and even consider subscribing.
Ooh, wow, man. I did not know that Mike got so much beef. I don't want to say enemies. Yeah, so, yeah, I didn't know about his family, though, that he has some issue with his brother, though. I heard stories about that, but the Prince and Michael one, that's a very interesting one. So I'm definitely going to do a video about that one. So I'll do like a what happened video between Michael versus Prince. So I'll do my research on that. So I think I'm going to try that out probably 2026. Probably like early 2026. So I'm not sure when, though, but I want to do my research on that, though. So yeah, see what led to the issue between those two, though. So that's the video, guys. Let me know in the comments what you think about this video. Are you shocked? I mean, I know about the Eminem part, though. Yeah, so let me know in the comments what y'all think about this video, guys. I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace out, y'all.